Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our final show of the 15th Annual Moccasin Bend Fall Lecture Series. I'm Tricia Mims, the Executive Director of National Park Partners for Chickamauga and Chattanooga National Military Park, including Moccasin Bend National Archaeological District. On behalf of our Board of Directors, thank you for joining us today. In the 15-year history of the Moccasin Bend Lecture Series, we've only ever had to cancel one show because of the effects of Hurricane Irma in September of 2017, shutting down the city of Chattanooga on the day of the lecture. Zoom was not a part of our everyday vocabulary back then, and we are grateful that the technology exists for us to be able to deliver to you our lecture series this year using a virtual platform. I want to give a special thanks to Justin Casey and Helm Projects for producing our series this year. Locally, your Chickamauga and Chattanooga National Military Park is a natural, historic, and cultural resource, and National Park Partners works to preserve and promote the stories of these national treasures. We work closely with the National Park Service, led by Superintendent Brad Bennett, to develop projects and programs that emphasize our core belief that the park belongs to everyone and everyone belongs in the park. To that end, we've just released our Forever Moccasin Bend campaign to create a welcoming entrance befitting the country's only national archaeological district. Over 90% of the funding has been identified for a new parking area with restrooms, an interpretive display outlining the history and trails of Moccasin Bend, as well as an accessible walkway leading to a covered pavilion at the Tennessee River where National Park Rangers, tribal leaders, and others can continue to share in the history and legacy of Moccasin Bend with locals and visitors alike. Please visit forevermoccasinbend.org to learn how you can make a difference in getting us the last 10% of the way there. The Moccasin Bend Lecture Series was created in 2006 by local businessman and conservationist Mr. Greg Vital. Greg has been a longtime supporter of the Friends of Moccasin Bend and the Friends of Chickamauga and Chattanooga National Military Park, which are now combined into National Park Partners. In addition to his many other awards and recognitions, Greg received our Drew Haskins Jr. Award of Merit in 2008. Greg recently served as the past president of the National Parks Conservation Association and has visited over 360 of the 421 national park units in the country. Truly a remarkable achievement. Here's Greg to welcome you in his own words.
Welcome to Lookout Mountain, and more importantly, the 15th Annual Moccasin Bend Lecture Series. I'm Greg Vital, a proud member of the National Park Partners Board and lifelong supporter of national parks and land conservation. In 2005, the late Shelley Andrews, Becky Browder, and myself were sitting in 212 Market Street discussing the importance of introducing the Chattanooga community to the newly created Moccasin Bend Archaeological District as a new unit of Chickamauga-Chattanooga National Military Park. There, the idea of the annual lecture series was born. Moccasin Bend is unique in its original legislation as the nation's first archaeological district. It tells the story and protects a 10,000-year history of Native American peoples living on the Bend. It protects important Civil War earthworks during the Chattanooga campaign, parts of the Trail of Tears, and the original Federal Road, along with evidence of the early industrialization of Chattanooga. The Bend also features natural areas for trails and paths and wildlife habitat, all for the benefit and enjoyment of all visitors, protected by the staff of the National Park Service. So as the concept of the lecture series evolved, 3 guest speakers a year, starting in 2006, each fall, covering a variety of subjects. Now, 15 years later and 40 speakers, I'm proud to continue to underwrite this annual event for the enjoyment of all who love national parks and our National Military Park. Some of those speakers were authors, musicians, historians, a former Secretary of the Interior, 2 directors of the National Park Service, including the first African American director and the first woman director of the National Park Service, Principal Chief of both the Cherokee Nations, Eastern Band, and the Cherokee Nation in Oklahoma. We have met at the Tennessee Aquarium, Camp House, Bessie Smith Hall, UTC, Reflection Riding, and the IMAX, and now virtually. Now for a short moment of personal preference. I want to recognize my 91-year-old mother, Rita Vital, who many of you know, who in 15 years never missed a lecture series presentation, and today is also joining us by Zoom. Welcome, Mom. Although we all would love to be together as we annually have done, we will carry on that tradition someday in the future. So as we continue this great legacy of supporting the Bend, as well as Chickamauga-Chattanooga National Military Park, let's all enjoy this virtual event and reminisce about great times we spent in a national park. Again, welcome, and here's to another 15 years.
Thank you, Greg. We are very grateful, as always, for your ongoing support of National Park Partners and for creating this wonderful lecture series and continuing the legacy for 15 years. Now it's my pleasure to introduce Julia Keefe. Julia is an acclaimed jazz vocalist and actor and a member of the Nez Perce tribe. Julia is a native of Seattle and participated in the Lionel Hampton Jazz Festival, International Jazz Festival in Moscow, Idaho for 5 years, receiving the Outstanding Vocal Soloist Award in 2007, in addition to participating in award-winning choir and ensemble groups. She continued her jazz training at the University of Miami's Frost School of Music, graduating with honors and earning a Bachelor of Arts in Jazz Vocals performance in 2011. Julia went on to receive a Master of Arts in Jazz Vocals from the Manhattan School of Music in 2013. Using her unique blend of quirky humor and timeless jazz standards, Julia presents a musical overview of the Indigenous influence on the music of the 20th century. From Mildred Bailey to Jim Pepper and beyond, Julia demonstrates that not only are Indigenous people alive, well, and making waves in today's popular music, but Indigenous voices and influences were imperative to the evolution of jazz in every musical genre that followed. Without further ado, please join me in welcoming Julia Keefe.
So I remember you. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. I remember you. You're the one who made my dreams come true a few kisses ago. I remember you. You're the one who said I love you too. I do, didn't you know? I remember too a distant bell and stars that fell like rain from out of the blue. And when my life is through and angels ask me to recall the thrill of it all, then I tell them I remember you. It's not the pale moon that excites me, that thrills and delights me. Oh no, it's just the nearness of you. It isn't your sweet conversation that brings this sensation. Oh no, it's just the nearness of you. When you're in my arms and I feel you so close to me, all my wildest dreams come true. I need no soft lights to enchant me if you only grant me the right to hold you ever so tight, and to feel in the night the nearness of you. to hold you ever so tight, and to feel in the night the nearness of you. Those leaves right there. The falling leaves drift by my window, the falling leaves of red and gold. I see your lips, those sunburned kisses, the sunburned hands I used to hold. But since you went away, the days grow long, and soon I'll hear old winter's song. But I miss you most of all, my darling, when autumn leaves start to fall.
can't hear you. Okay. I can hear you.
Yay, okay, great. Yes, it's, there's always got to be a little like figured out as we go, but
It's
that,
jazz. It's fun. We'll just go with it.
yeah, you got to improvise, right? Well, thank you so much. That was a wonderful first set, and I want to make sure that everyone listening today knows that they are free to ask questions using the Zoom chat feature, and as well as on Facebook Live. Either way, we'll be taking breaks in between the sets to have the opportunity to ask those questions of Julia. So please send them in. But I'm going to get the ball rolling. First, I'd love to know that Autumn Leaves song, of course, is perfect for this late October weather. But I'd love to know more about the inspiration of the first set that you chose for us.
For sure. So I started with I Remember You mainly because it has been a song that has kind of seeped into my life, especially during the COVID lockdown. For some reason, it just it got stuck in my head, and all I wanted to do was perform that song. And so for this opportunity, I was like, I'm gonna start with that since it's just been just in my soul and just needed to come out. And it's also a song that I've never really performed much outside of this. So that was sort of a fun experiment and a fun adventure we went on. The Nearness of You is a song that I've performed many, many times. It's one of my favorite ballads of all time. And so I wanted to bring that tune into the first set, especially really just to, I don't know, it's sort of like wrapping yourself up in a really warm blanket or sweater or something. It's something so comfortable and comforting. And I wanted to bring that level of just comfort and intimacy with that song into this first set. And then, of course, Autumn Leaves. I thought, well, it's autumn. I mean, it's kind of winter now in Spokane. It's crazy to look at those videos and see, I was outside of my mom's house in her backyard. We were recording in her backyard, and I was wearing short sleeves. Now I'm bundled up in a sweater.
Yeah, that happened fast, didn't it? Yeah,
it really did.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And I learned when I was reading about you, getting ready for this show, that you've really worked to get more recognition of Mildred Bailey as an artist. And just, I'm going to leave it there and let you run with it. Tell us more about her and why she's important to you and the recognition that you've worked on.
Absolutely. So Mildred Rinker Bailey was a Native American jazz vocalist of the 30s and 40s. She was the first female vocalist to sing in front of a big band in the late 20s, early 30s. And when you think about how huge that is, you think about all of the vocalists who followed, who sang in front of big bands. You have Ella Fitzgerald, you have Billie Holiday, you have Sarah Vaughan, you have all of the greats, jazz greats. And they, obviously, their talents stand alone. And I'm not going to take away from that in any way, shape, or form. But you think about the first woman to sing in front of a big band. That is a huge accomplishment for women in jazz. And for that woman to be a member of the Coeur d'Alene tribe, to have spent her childhood in Spokane, Washington, that's how I sort of came across Mildred Bailey. She was really good friends with Bing Crosby when he was younger, and he credits her as one of the people who inspired him and got his mitt in the dirt in a way of getting into jazz, and he said that she helped him out immensely as a young vocalist. So to have that type of resume as a Native American jazz vocalist during a time when being a Native American in the arts, being a person of color in the arts was difficult and taboo and frowned upon for her to have such a profound impact on the evolution of jazz. I feel that she needs more recognition. When I stumbled across her name, I thought, who is this person? I've never heard of her. And many people in the jazz community still don't know who Mildred Bailey is, and Native Americans don't know who Mildred Bailey is. So it's a benefit for both of those communities to recognize, the profound impact of this woman. And it's been my mission for most of my career to get her inducted into the Jazz Hall of Fame at Lincoln Center, because you can't have a baseball Hall of Fame without Jackie Robinson. And I truly believe that you can't have a Jazz Hall of Fame without Mildred Bailey.
I would agree with that. It seems entirely fitting, given everything that you just shared. Thank you. Let's see. We had one comment come in on the chat, just some props to you, saying that the music is lovely. And I'm going to check the Facebook really quick. Joanne Kaufman says Nez Perce Tribe in the house. I don't know if you know Joanne, but she's representing with you. So far, it's just a lot of kudos and people are loving it. So let's go to the next set and we'll see what questions might come in between that and the break.
Great.
Thanks,
you.
Julia.
Hide your heart from sight. Lock your dreams at night. It could happen to you. Don't count stars or you might stumble. Someone drops a sigh and down you tumble. Keep an eye on spring. Run when church bells ring. It could happen to you. All I did was wonder how your arms would be. And it happened to me. Hide your heart from sidewalk. Your dreams at night could happen. It could happen to you. Don't count stars or you might stumble. Someone drops a sigh and down you tumble. Keep an eye on spring. Run when church bells ring, 'cause it could happen. It could happen to you. All I did was wonder how your arms would be. And it happened. Oh, it happened. And it happened to me. Oh, felt good. Quiet nights of quiet stars, quiet chords from my guitar, floating on the silence that surrounds us. Quiet walks by quiet streams, quiet thoughts and quiet dreams, and a window that looks on the mountains and the streets. Oh, how lovely. This is where I wanna be, here with you, so close to me, until the final flicker of life's embers. I, who was lost and lonely, believing life was only a bitter, tragic joke, have found with you the meaning of existence. Oh my love. Quiet nights of quiet stars, quiet chords from my guitar, floating on the silence that surrounds us. Quiet walks by quiet streams, quiet thoughts and quiet dreams, and the window that looks out upon the mountains and the streams. How lovely, this is where I wanna be. Here with you, so close to me until the final flicker of life's embers. I was lost and lonely, believing life was only a bitter, tragic joke. Found with you the meaning of existence, the meaning of existence, the meaning of existence. Oh, my love. That's for Debbie. Itchy leg, yeah. I know, I'm so sorry. You have a mask? All right, so. Is this about where we were?
Yeah.
One, two, 1, 2, 3, 2, 3. In her own sweet world, populated by dolls and clowns and a prince and a big purple bear, lives my favorite girl, unaware of the worried frowns that we weary grown-ups all wear. In the sun, she dances to silent music, songs that are spun of gold somewhere in her own little head. One day, all too soon, she'll grow up and she'll leave her dolls and her prince and her silly old bear. In her own sweet world, populated by dolls and clowns and a prince and a big purple bear, lives my favorite girl, unaware of the worried frowns that we weary grown-ups all wear. In the sun, she dances to silent music, songs that are spun of gold somewhere in her own little head. One day, oh, too soon, she'll grow up and she'll leave her dolls and her prince and her silly old bear. When she goes, they will cry as they whisper goodbye. They will miss her, I fear, but then so will I. They will miss her, I fear, but then so will I.
So good. Thank you, Julia. Your music is just incredible. And I can tell that you've got quite a rapport with your band. You all seem like you've played together forever. Real quick, I want you to talk about them, but I want to let anyone know who may be just joining us on Facebook Live that welcome to the 15th annual Moccasin Bend Fall Lecture Series. And Julia Keefe is a Nez Perce musician who is sharing her music with us and a little bit about her research on the influence of Indigenous culture and jazz music and how they continue to evolve and grow together. So after you tell us a little bit about your band, would you talk a little bit more about your research of the coevolution of Indigenous culture and jazz music?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, our band we don't actually play together very often. In fact, my bass player in these recordings, Nick Isherwood, this was the first time I had ever met Nick.
Wow.
Because of some scheduling difficulties with my other bass player, Riley Gray, my piano player, whom I've gigged with multiple times. He's a really wonderful professor out at Eastern Washington University and Gonzaga University. He's a dear friend. He said, "Yeah, Nick Isherwood, let's get him on the gig." And Nick is a very bright and lovely jazz musician. He's in his undergraduate at Berklee School of Music out in Boston. And he was just a delight, just a wonderful human. And so I think just energy-wise, we matched. Mm-hmm. And I think that came across in the recordings as well. And Brendan McMurphy, he is the drummer and trumpet player. And he and his wife, Rachel Bade McMurphy, who's this wonderful jazz vocalist and saxophonist here in Spokane, they've sort of become the center of the spinning wheel that is the jazz music scene in the inland Northwest, and everyone sort of goes to them because they've become such an integral part of the scene, and they have been promoting jazz music here, bringing in wonderful world-renowned acts to perform here in Spokane. And so being able to work with Brendan was just wonderful. We were just nerding out on jazz, which is one of my favorite things to do.
Well, that's a great segue into your research about the coevolution.
Yeah, absolutely. Jazz was born in the brothels of New Orleans, which I always love to start my history lectures with that, to sort of humanize this very profound and beautiful all-American art form that really has become an arts music. It's taught in schools because of its complexity, and but it was born in such a really wonderful way for, I think, something that's all American. So it was born in New Orleans because of the Western European harmony and instruments sort of mixing together with these beautiful rhythms that come from Africa. So jazz music and blues is very much rooted in the Black experience in America, but simultaneously happening in the early 1900s were Indian schools. So, it's easy to sort of focus on one aspect of U.S. history and sort of forget about all of the other things that are happening at the exact same time. And so to put these things in sort of like, two parallel lines of like, okay, so when jazz was born, you have Indian schools where children were taken from their families, from their tribes, and very much were in an environment that was meant to assimilate them into this Western European culture. And with that came Western European harmony and Western European instruments. And so it's only natural that some of these things have a crossover. Talking about Mildred Bailey's mother, who is a Coeur d'Alene tribal member, was known for playing amazing stride piano. And you think about why, and in the early 1900s, would a woman be so good at piano? And it goes back to a Native American woman, to be so good at piano. And it goes back to that Indian school missionary influence on Native American culture in the early 1900s. And that played out for many, many Native Americans. There are stories of, after getting out of Indian schools, natives had these instruments, these horns, they played in the marching bands in schools, and now they're not in school anymore. And the popular music of the day is going from marching bands into this new thing of the blues and this new thing of early jazz. And of course, Native musicians started to go in that way musically as well. There are stories of small groups, the Lollipop Six from my tribe, Nez Perce tribe. We have these instruments and we have this music in our ear. Now we can start creating this music together. And there are stories of, when big bands were traveling through the U.S., they would pick up, local musicians to sort of fill out the band. It was, much more economically sound to do it that way. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes those musicians were Native American musicians. So Native Americans are deeply rooted in this all-American art form, um, in their own beautiful way. Um, and I think it's really important to obviously remember that, you know, where jazz comes from is very much from the Black experience, but that doesn't negate the Native American experience happening simultaneously, and how they intermingled um, over the course of the lifetime of jazz, and they still, you know, cross over and uh, fuse together to this day.
Indeed. Well, thank you for sharing that history with us. It's fascinating. And I think a lot of folks were really interested in this topic when we proposed the program of something just completely new, or hadn't really thought about this topic at all. And so it's really wonderful to be able to not only experience your beautiful music, but to learn about some of the things that you've researched for so many years. So let me just check really quickly and see if anything has come in. Yeah, a lot of folks are saying very interesting history. They've never thought about that before. I think we'll go into the third set, and when that's over, we'll see if any more questions have come in. But anyone who's watching, feel free to type in a question in the chat on the Zoom feature or on Facebook Live, and we'll get it to Julia after this set.
Ready? 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. You'd be so nice to come home to. You'd be so nice by the fire, while the breeze on high sang a lullaby. You'd be all that I could desire, under stars chilled by the winter, under an August moon burning above. You'd be oh so nice. You'd be paradise to come home to and under We're feeling it now.
Turkey disturbance.
Let's see. No, we're doing the big 5 roll, right?
Yep.
My heart is sad and lonely. For you I sigh, for you, dear, only. I tell you I mean it. I'm all for you, body and soul. I spend my days in longing, and I'm wondering why it's me you're wronging. Why haven't you seen it? I'm all for you, body and soul. I can't believe it. It's hard to conceive it that you turn away romance. Are you pretending it looks like the ending? Unless I could have one more chance to prove you my life a wreck you're making. You know I'm yours for just the taking. I gladly surrender myself to you, body and soul. I can't believe it. It's hard to conceive it that you would turn away romance. Are you pretending unless I have one more chance to prove. Dear, my life a wreck you're making. You know I'm yours. You know I'm yours for just the taking. I'd gladly surrender myself to you. I'd gladly surrender myself to you, body and soul. Great swingy tune.
Yep.
Gig up, dig up, gig up. Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4. No one to talk with, all by myself. No one to walk with, but I'm happy on the shelf. Ain't misbehaving, saving all my love for you. I know for certain the one that I love. I'm through with flirting, it's just you I'm thinking of. I ain't misbehaving, I'm saving all my love for you. Like Jack Horner in a corner, I don't go nowhere, what do I care? Your kisses are worth waiting for. Believe me, I don't stay out late, I don't care to go. I'm home about 8, just me and my radio. I ain't misbehaving, saving my love for you. Whoa, whoa, whoa.
Wow, Julia. So good. I mean, I hope everyone is like loving this jazz brunch and learn as much as I am. I mean, this is fantastic. So yeah, what better way to spend your early Sunday afternoon? You know, you get your coffee, your French toast, you know, and this amazing jazz music. So thank you so much for sharing it with us. We've had like a flurry of questions. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no! Oh, I was just saying thank you for having me.
Oh yeah, it's a pleasure. We've got a flurry of questions that have come in, so we're gonna try to get to as many as we can. I want to let folks know that even though we had a 90-minute program scheduled to end at 1:30, we do have one more set. So we'll get through the questions while we have Julia, and then we'll close with that last set of music, and we'll keep it on till the last beat is played, and then so we won't. I'm sure we won't be ending at 1:30, but. Let me start with these questions, but before I do, can you please let folks know, in case we don't have a chance to get to all of them or more keep coming in, do you want to give an email address or website where people can reach out to you and find out more about your music and maybe ask any follow-up questions?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can go to my website, which is juliakeefe.com. I'm also on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. My Facebook is actually a really great way to get a hold of me. So just facebook.com/Julia Keefe official. And yeah, I'm happy to field any questions. Please feel free to reach out to me at any time.
Great, thank you. Well, I'll start with one that came in on the chat from the webinar. So Shelby says, thank you for sharing with us today. Can you speak to some of the indigenous elements found in jazz music, past and present? For example, I'm not sure if I'm going to pronounce this correctly, but Mwalam, and then she has Morgan James Peters, in parentheses, has spoken about how some of jazz vocalizations are influenced by Choctaw singing.
Oh, well, I have heard some lectures, and I have read some articles about how native singing has influenced some jazz singing, and even I mean, a bulk of my research has been around Mildred Bailey. She has very much been sort of the focal point of my research. And even Mildred Bailey had said that native singing was a really wonderful tool for her as a young vocalist, and how it really was a vocal strengthening sort of practice for her. I have heard, some other theories in terms of like where jazz vocal improvisation comes from, if it comes from the indigenous experience of the Americas. I have also heard that it comes from the Irish experience of the Americas. But in my research as a jazz historian, that is another element that is very uniquely from the Black experience. There is this sort of legend of scat singing being created by Louis Armstrong on the day that he recorded the song Heebie Jeebies. They said that the fan in the room, because it was so hot while they were recording, they had a fan going, and the fan blew off the lyrics off of the music stand for Louis Armstrong, and then he just started improvising in the way that he does, the same way that he does with his trumpet. But one of the beautiful things about jazz is that it can take on very many forms. In that, especially in the latter half of the 20th century, when we started moving away from swing music and moving away from bebop and then hard bop, post bop, that sort of evolution. You go through, your Miles Davis and your John Coltrane, and you start branching into avant-garde or free jazz. And then from that, you get into jazz fusion. And so it was in that sort of time period when, Jim Pepper sort of emerged on the scene as this big, beautiful sound from a saxophone. There's a free and fusion. And Pepper's Powwow, if you haven't heard this album, it's one of my favorites, the song Witchy Taito. Whenever I hear it, I cry. But it's this beautiful fusion of indigenous beats and indigenous storytelling with jazz and almost with folk and rock. So there is a marriage between the indigenous experience and jazz. And the beautiful thing is that you can look back into history and see where that marriage was created, but you can also create that marriage going forward. You can make jazz and indigenous music into its own fusion and its own feeling and its own story in today's world. And there are quite a few indigenous jazz musicians who are doing that now. I sort of do a throwback to the swing era, and I have ventured into, later in the 20th century and exploring some of those more contemporary jazz feelings. Are musicians who are now.
Thanks, Julia.
Answer the question.
Yeah, we got that's great history and a good, kind of branch into the next question, which was about, I think, making jazz more accessible sort of to a wider audience, because I think maybe many people do have in their minds sort of this conception of jazz as being like, oh, that old stuff that my grandparents listened to or something, and like totally missing out on these more modern expressions, or even the music that you're playing, although it's from in that older era, it feels more modern and contemporary, sort of the spin that you're putting on it. So do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. And that was sort of a criticism, not a criticism, but just sort of like a weird bump in the road that I've met, often, sort of like, oh, jazz, why are you singing jazz? And it really, I think it is because it's so expressive and open to self-expression. There are a lot of genres of music where you have to stick to what is written on the page or what has been taught to you very specifically. Whereas, and of course, as a student of jazz, you do want to learn what the greats have done. But what the greats have done was taking what was written on the page and making it entirely their own. And that's what really spoke to me as a young jazz musician. But I know that that's not like, what everyone is drawn to, especially as a listener. It's easy to see jazz as, old people music or elevator music, especially if we're going into like bossa nova. You have your like, da, 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 da. And that breaks my heart. There was a company, Muzak, are responsible for taking bossa nova and turning it into elevator music, which is just so sad because bossa nova comes from this, again, a really beautiful, very similar to jazz, this conglomeration of indigenous music and Portuguese music and rhythms from Africa, and it created samba. And then bossa nova is sort of like the slowed down samba. And if you listen to Antonio Carlos Jobim, if you listen to João Gilberto or Astrid Gilberto, Brazilian musicians, you can there is that sort of initial hump of like, oh, elevator music. But then if you really get into and listen to the rhythms that they're playing, oh, it's just so beautiful and passionate. And I don't know if I'm answering the question, but really it's about just listening and finding that version of jazz that really speaks to you. If it is free jazz, if you listen to Ornette Coleman, if you listen to, later Coltrane, if it is fusion, listening to Jim Pepper, listening to, so many names are coming to mind that I'm like blanking. There are so many different avenues of jazz that you can listen to, and really, I think there's a little bit of jazz for everyone, but it's just about listening to it and really, it is sort of an intellectual art form. And that's one of the reasons why I like to start my lectures with, this was born in the brothels of New Orleans, because then it sort of takes away that like, I don't know, that like inaccessibility. Mm-hmm. But really it is about expression. So finding that story that really speaks to you. And as a performer, that's sort of what I try to do. I try to tell stories, even in the ways that I improvise or play around with the melody. I just want to tell stories.
Well, you do it very well.
Yeah.
Let me see. I know there were a few more questions. Somebody asked about the movie La La Land, and that the hero of that movie wants to open a jazz club, and that there might be other ways in which more recent, Hollywood or movies have kind of made jazz, feel a little bit cooler again. I don't know if you have a specific response to that, but the same person also wanted to know about your personal jazz heroes and who's meant a lot to you in your work. So maybe you can address both of those.
Yeah. So La La Land, I liked it and also like hated it at the same time. Maybe because I was a jazz musician in Los Angeles for a good 3 years of my life. And I do understand the sort of trying to be a jazz purist. I can understand that as a jazz musician. However, when you're a jazz musician who gets hired for a tour that pays you really well, very rarely is there a jazz musician who sits there and goes, but I'm not sticking to like bebop music and that's all I want and I'm a sellout. It's like, no, you're a working musician.
Yeah.
And but what I do appreciate about La La Land is that it wasn't jazz was in a contemporary setting. Here is this young jazz musician who geeks out on the history, although he did get some of the history wrong, which of course nerdy me knows.
Right.
That's incorrect.
Says the professor, right? Yeah.
Yes. Where is it doesn't even matter. But I do appreciate that it did, to have someone who was deeply passionate about bebop and hard bop to be a young man in 21st century America, 21st century Hollywood. I did appreciate that. And I think there is something to be said about, jazz in all of its forms is alive and well all over the world. And, it isn't an old person's music. It isn't a music of yesteryear. It's very much a music of today. And some of my personal heroes, I grew up listening to Billie Holiday. I know that in a lot of, my swing, I love swing tunes. I love those up-tempo swings, and Billie does them so, so well. But, when you think of Billie Holiday, you think of those ballads, and you think of that heartbreak, and you think of just that emotive quality that Billie Holiday brings to music. And but she was a huge hero of mine. She crept into my ear as a 4-year-old, and I couldn't get her sound or her songs out of my head. I love Ella Fitzgerald and I love Sarah Vaughan, but another part of me is very much, folk music. A huge hero of mine is Buffy St. Marie, who's an Indigenous songwriter and rock star. I also love Bonnie Raitt. I love the blues. I love Leonard Cohen. His lyrics are perfect. So I do have just a wealth of heroes, musical heroes. Someone who I can listen to and they make me cry is John Coltrane, especially later in his life, his Live in Seattle. Oh man, I was on the subway in New York and I was just listening to this for a history class in my master's program, and I was listening to John Coltrane and I was just sitting there just like I'm sure people thought something was really wrong, but I was like, no, I'm just feeling it. It's fine.
Yeah, well, he's incredible. Yeah, I can see why that would be one of your major inspirations. Do you have any last words for our audience before we go to your last and final set?
My final set. I thank you so much for having me. I hope you learned something, or even if you didn't learn anything, I hope you enjoyed, what you heard. Please feel free to contact me if you have any other questions. This next set, I really did put together a set of just my favorite songs. The ballad in this set was one that I had always turned my nose up at as a younger musician. And then it wasn't until my master's program that I really sat down and learned the song and listened to the song and marinated in the song. And it's one of the most beautiful ballads of my life. And I end with a song that I always tend to end my sets with or end my gigs with, just because I think it's the perfect way to end, and it's another Antonio Carlos Jobim tune. But I just want to thank you all. Thank you so much, Trisha, for having me, and just love always to all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Julia, and thank you to everyone who's joined us throughout the course of our 15th annual lecture series. And thank you to Greg Vidal for underwriting our wonderful series this year. And we're so glad you joined us today, and we hope you enjoy this last set from Julia. Thank you.
I wanna be no one but me. I'm in love with a lover who likes me the way I am. I got my faults, he likes my faults. I'm not very bright, he's not very bright. He thinks I'm grand, that's grand for me. He may be wrong, but if we get along, what do we care, say we? When he holds me close, closest we can be, I tell the lad that I'm thankful and I'm glad that I'm nobody else but me. I wanna be no one but me. I'm in love with a lover who likes me the way I am. I've got my faults. He likes my faults. I'm not very bright and he's not very bright. He thinks I'm grand, and that's grand for me. He may be wrong, but if we get along, what do we care, say we? When he holds me close, close as we can be. Oh, I tell the lad, I'm thankful and I'm glad I'm nobody else but me. I'm nobody else but me. Love is funny, or it's sad, or it's quiet, or it's mad. It's a good thing, or it's bad. But beautiful, beautiful to take a chance. And if you fall, you fall. And I'm thinking I wouldn't mind at all. Love is tearful, or it's gay. It's a problem, or it's play. It's a heartache either way. Oh, but it's beautiful. And I'm thinking, if you were mine, I'd never let you go. And that would be but beautiful, I know. it's a problem or it's play. It's a heartache either way. Oh, but it's beautiful. And I'm thinking, if you were mine, I'd never let you go. And that would be but beautiful. I know. Right?
Right?
Run when church bells ring. Ding dong. Would have been perfect.
Is it corny that I always hit the bell of my cymbal when that lyric happens?
I always go dee doo dee doo in my melody.
Nice.
Like every time the the outro or the head out. Musical nerdness happening. It's good. Great. And we're doing that flute part. Okay, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. No more blues, I'm going back home. No, no more blues, I promise no more to roam. Home is where the heart is. A funny part is, my heart's been right here all along. No more tears, Tell